Hello, everybody, and welcome to our most recent webinar for advisors. This one is specifically on HMRC inquiries and what we regularly see that other advisors get wrong that can make things get a lot worse. So this is brought to you by Churchill Tax Advisers. You've got me, Mike Walden.
And Imad Ilyas here, head of tax investigations at Churchill Tax.
Perfect. So we'll go right into the introduction slide. There we go. So, as I said, today we're talking about HMRC inquiries, and the motivation for looking at this, as mentioned previously, is that HMRC inquiries are on the rise, and how accountants advisors deal with these things during the course of the inquiry can make it get a lot worse or hopefully a lot better. Through HMRC's inquiry process, as soon as there's any tax, they follow up with a consideration of penalties, and that penalty consideration can often be based on what is said through the course of the inquiry, so it does really hinge on how your advisor approaches it. A lot of problems actually tend to arise after the inquiry opens, so it's not just what you've done before, but how you deal with the inquiry as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you're spot on that point. We've had cases which came in simple compliance checks, right? And then they have turned into COP9 simply because the inquiry, the compliance check wasn't handled properly, right? And we'll talk about it more in detail.
Yep. So the first risk area that we want to talk about is control. And what we want to do is highlight the things that people do wrong. So it's not uncommon to assume you know your clients, you know what's going on. Any inquiry is routine. People will often ignore what type of inquiry it is, what powers HMRC may have or have used. And so right at the outset, they give HMRC everything that's requested. Now, the issue is, if you do all of those things, you lose control right from the beginning and you're on the back foot throughout. If HMRC control the agenda, then you really can't recover that for quite some time. So doing this correctly, in our view, means you start by seeking an understanding of what HMRC's objective is. You set the boundaries early. You're not giving them everything they ask for necessarily, because there are limits on what HMRC are entitled to have. If you give them broad-ranging information, of course, they're going to continue to ask broad-ranging questions. So you need to consider what is responded to when, as well as how.
And another thing, Mike, related to over-disclosure, right, is a lot of inquiries that we've helped with, people allow their clients to sit. I mean, I was talking to someone who's got 3 fraud investigation officers coming. They have sent a 3-4 hour agenda, and the client is the one that's taking that meeting, taking charge of that meeting.
Yeah.
You know, I did say, guys, look, it's going to be a train wreck. Reschedule it. The guy was really confident. HMRC came, and then 1 week later he said, I think you guys should take over the inquiry.
Yeah.
So
recovering that takes so long. That one.
Yeah, I'm sure that. So like you said, you know, the way we try and do things is have control, and you know, where HMRC are asking for information, don't want to, of course, you want to only give what you think is the right amount of information. Of course, that requires specialist knowledge to know where to set the boundaries. But then the setting of the boundaries needs to be done in a very tactful manner.
Yeah.
So as to not get their backs up, and then that can be more disastrous, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, you bring up information. That's actually our next point. We've got the flow of information. So again, the big mistakes that we often see: providing documents without assessing relevance, literally just give whatever HMRC asks; not challenging the scope. So again, have you considered the entities involved? Have you considered the years involved? Do HMRC have the power to look at it? Do they have the power to address it if they find something wrong? Volunteering explanations when not relevant. So sending information just to be helpful without asking, is it relevant? Is it within scope, and what does it imply? You might think key cooperation, as we've always talked about, is particularly important, but you can cooperate whilst also steering. So that's where you've referred to being tactful in your approach. HMRC won't forget what they receive. It's all recorded, it's all saved, it's all considered later, whether by this case officer, their manager, key sign off, or potentially an independent review, and later when it goes to tribunal. So when you give information and think they're not going to look at it, depending what team it is, they certainly will. And if you give something incorrectly, you really can't claw that back later.
I mean, we had an example of someone that came to us, and HMRC were hinging on a point that he had said in a meeting, and they sent like 50-page meeting notes, and the client just blindly signed it.
Yeah.
Why are they, when people are when we're dealing with these type of cases, we tend to not have those meeting notes signed. That goes again, people are not aware that there's no legal requirement for you to sign the meeting notes.
Yeah, I think the thing is, HMRC will make it clear that if you don't sign the meeting notes, they will treat it as if you've accepted it. But them treating it as if you've accepted it is not the same as you going through and
they
saying,
can say
point by
that,
point,
but
I'm in agreement. Yeah.
They can say that, but we both know that the way we do it is we make sure that they're aware that we're not signing because we can't comment on it or can't agree to it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So next we have consistency and planning. You might not think the two things are necessarily inherently related, but again, in terms of errors that we see, HMRC obviously write direct to your clients and copy you in. Who gets it when they get it is often unclear, but giving that letter to your client without reviewing it, without guidance, allowing them potentially to draft a response, not really structuring it or considering what is the tax risk, what is the behavioral risk, what am I looking to address, can lead to a situation where errors, even innocent ones or inconsistencies, that's what HMRC rely on to challenge your credibility. So if you say one thing at the top of the page, another thing at the bottom, or often between different responses, that's where HMRC are going to pull you apart. So a short planning exercise at the start, or just overall consideration of what are we trying to achieve, what have we said, and where are we trying to get to here? What are we trying to illustrate? We're not trying to cover anything up, but what are we trying to illustrate here? And is everything that we're saying following that pattern? Where it doesn't, is it because we've said something wrong earlier? And if so, let's make a correction instead of just stating a different answer at this point, which is going to make your case fall apart.
And I think that becomes even more relevant. A number of times HMRC can open multiple inquiries. So it could be, they're looking at one family member and then they open an inquiry to another family member.
Yeah.
Or they've opened a limited company inquiry and then they open a personal inquiry. So what you're saying on one end needs to tally up with the other end. Or what you have said in another inquiry. It just has to match up. Otherwise, you're just inviting more trouble.
Yeah. And as I said, this isn't about hiding facts. This is about presenting them clearly and coherently and repeatedly. So I think the next point that we're going to come on to is more on the same. So it's the focus on behavior. Now, anyone who works HMRC inquiry should hopefully be able to tell you that HMRC's process is they, in theory, look at 1 year, identify if there are any issues. If there are, then they consider the tax. Once the tax is concluded, they give you your fact sheets, and then they start telling you about behavioural position, what they're thinking, and asking questions on that. And it seems very logical. That's how the legislation works. But to be clear, that's not how any mind works. And that's not really what the result is. Because from the first time you contact HMRC, no matter what form that takes, in respect of this inquiry, they will be having considerations on behaviour. And things that you say at the outset will impact later. So errors that we see here is, advisors not bearing that in mind. So they focus only on the tax calculations. They say things to placate HMRC to move it forward and get to the point of agreeing the tax without considering that actually everything they've said is going to be relevant. I had a client where they had an initial call with HMRC before instructing an advisor, and things that they said in that initial call, which were purely to bend the knee and show that they were willing to work with HMRC and they could see that they'd done wrong, led to an assessment of deliberate behaviour, which, we're going to probably have to take this quite far to get that overturned, because HMRC then shared a note of that phone call, which was signed, which was returned, all before we were involved. And it was really one word about what the customer understood and the timing of that this whole thing hinges on.
Yeah.
So, as I said, from the outset, HMRC will be considering behaviour, and you should be too. Behaviour affects the penalties. So what penalty range you're falling into can have a huge impact on the final liability. It also affects the time limits. So how many years HMRC are looking at, which again, massive impact on the liability overall. It can also have an impact on HMRC escalating it, passing it to a different team or a different level of sign off. If there's any indication that you've done things deliberately, it's much harder to row back and unpick that, even if it's not the case. So, tone and strategy, I mean, you'll see that all these things tie together, but it's all around, from the outset, consistent approach, thinking about where it's going and why. So again, tone and strategy, accepting HMRC positions without challenge, or alternatively, becoming really confrontational really early. You see either side of that. People have their own way of dealing with inquiries that they feel have worked for a long time, but actually these are people who don't deal with inquiries day by day, and so something that worked some time ago really doesn't nowadays, in terms of the modern HMRC and how they work. So what we feel is best is consider the position in front of you. Consider the overall strategy and what you're seeking to achieve. You're not challenging things for the sake of challenging them where they're not going to be relevant, but you're also not simply accepting things and letting things slide that are wrong. So it's around cooperation with HMRC and a coordinated approach throughout.
Yeah, so essentially it's about, you have set two polar part type of things, where one is, okay, I'll just accept whatever they say, and the other thing is, okay, I'm just going to be difficult about everything they say.
Yeah.
What we say is there is a middle path. Getting confrontational, I have never seen it come with good results. Never.
No.
Right. At the same time, accepting it, because a lot of the times where people get really stressed about an inquiry, I just want them to go. I just want this thing over. Because the more you accept, the more they can throw you away. So being balanced and challenging where needed in the right way. I guess that's the balanced approach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, you've got to bear in mind that if you start challenging people day one, they're obviously having conversations internally and they're thinking about how to deal with things. Your routes of escalation are primarily, initially, going to be through their management chain. If you then escalate outside of their management chain, which of course you can do and sometimes are required to, it's not like their position won't be considered. And whilst a lot of HMRC's processes do guarantee, an independent look at the facts,
Yeah.
if it can be seen that from the outset you are effectively being unreasonable and irrational, that will affect how everyone within HMRC sees it. And at some point, you do probably want someone to side with you. So showing that you are reasonable where it is important to be reasonable actually means that when you do challenge and escalate and confront, it carries a lot more weight. So thank you for that. Overall, I think we see a lot of issues in a lot of inquiries that have gone wrong, and the general redress for these is a considered approach. You're not dealing with each letter as it falls on your desk and just getting it out of there. From the outset, what are you trying to achieve? Why? What are the errors that we need to address? Where do we actually need to concede so that we can move this forwards to conclusion? Ultimately, we want to get the best result for the client. So we want to control that narrative, determine what information is relevant, make sure that we give true consideration to behavior right from the outset, and everything you write should follow that path. And then lastly, think commercially. We're not just going to escalate and challenge everything because it's not going to be beneficial. It will result in costs. And sometimes you get people saying, well, I'm unwilling to accept a penalty because I don't think it's right. We're going to go down all of these routes. We're going to take it up to tribunal, where fundamentally the cost of doing even half of that is out of line with the penalty that you're seeking to resolve. So what is the result that you're actually seeking to achieve for the client? Because really that should be the priority.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. The behavior part and thinking commercially can be very, very important because our approach is to embed a defense in a very tactical way on the behavior throughout the inquiry rather than trying to address it. And knowing the right wording and terminology really is the key, because a lot of the times and it always comes in the end, so people tend to forget about it, and it's just like an unpleasant surprise that you're getting towards the end, which no one wants. And then commerciality, Mike, a lot of the times we have these conversations with clients to say, why do you want to pay us more than what the penalty is? I don't think it makes sense. Just accept it. Again, of course, we want to make sure it's not done in a way that HMRC are branding them as deliberate tax fraudsters when that's not the case. Then those could be scenarios, which are very few, where it's more about the behavior that HMRC are labeling them on, because it can bite 5-6 years down the line.
Yeah. And I think the other side of, thinking commercially here, going through that escalation and that challenge, it has a financial cost, but it's also going to delay things. You're not able to run your business. You're not able to live your life for the period where it remains uncertain. So
Absolutely.
There is a commercial aspect of, timing and reaching the resolution that may not be 100% ideal, but allows you to get on with your life sooner. So that balance does need to be considered as well. Thank you for your time here today. If anyone has any questions, obviously raise your hand and we'll get to it. But alternatively, we've got our contact details on screen. We're always happy to have a call, a consultation, answer any queries that you may have. And if it's the case that a client wants to reach out or you want to have that initial introduction, just get in touch and we'll arrange a call with you.